Family, peace and love. We are back. We are back. We are back. Did y'all miss us? I know y'all missed us. We've been going for a little minute. We finished the masterpiece, of course, the blueprint for Black Power, but we don't have to hold it up no more because we are all complete. It was a journey, family. It was a journey. I'm Lily Lapoete Speaks. As you know, I am the author of Perceptions of a Misplaced African. Family, but not to talk about me. Let's get into this. This is what we are reading. If you do not have your copy, we have what? 3 left, sis?
One.
Oh, wow. Okay, 1.
We have 1.
We only have 1 book left. If you can get your copy, 1 left. If you want to get it discounted from us. And other than that, you're on your own. You'll have to get it for $45. We had some available for $30, but you know, that's the last book that we have. As I said, I'm Lily Lapoete Speaks, aka Alima Njai. In order to join the panel or listen in the discussion, you would go to lilylapoetespeaks.com, family. You would click on the RAM Book Club tab and scroll down to the African Personality in America and click the appropriate chapter and the appropriate link that applies to what you would like to do. As I said, I'm the author of Perceptions of a Misplaced African, Volume 1. You can also find that. Dr. Ma'at is holding it up. Good look, Dr. Ma'at. You can find that also in the marketplace at lilylapoetespeaks.com. Thank you for joining us, family. We're going to kick off and show some different products and things like that, but let's let Dr. Ma'at introduce herself. Peace and love.
Peace and love, family. My name is Dr. Deanna Bailey, also known as Dr. Ma'at. I am the co-founder of Ed Anime Productions and the executive producer of Meltrek, which is a children's animated series that teaches African or Black history from an African or Black perspective. You can simply Google Meltrek and links to purchase the films will pop up. The film is available for digital download and also on DVD. We also have storybooks and coloring books available. I'm also adjunct faculty. Hopefully, sis, I'll be teaching full-time in the fall.
Okay.
Full-time lecturer over at the Morgan State University School of Engineering. I'll be there full-time in the fall. And hopefully within the next year or 2, they offer me a tenure track faculty position. So anyway, let's hold up some more product. We got, you know, Perceptions of a Misplaced African, Volume 1. We also have Aaron Knows About Africa. This is actually
love Aaron Knows About Africa.
Aaron Knows About Africa. You can go to Lily Lapoete Speaks /shop to purchase this book. We also have, want to show them the other book, sis?
We also have Newly Written by Naomi H. Bradley, MED. Forward by my husband, Benjamin Njai, Ifadele Akinloye Egunlana Olamakinde Adebanke, or you can call him Benjamin Njai. He's done the forward here. It's a good book, family. Ikaro Mama, Ikaro Daddy. It teaches us about a little bit about African culture and specifically how we greet our elders and the proper way to greet your elder. And also you'll learn a few cool Yoruba words along the way. So if you don't have your copy, family, you can go to, I think it's on Naomi's website. I feel like it's Naomi Bradley.
That's where I got it from, NaomiBradley.com.
Bradley.com. You can get it there. I don't think Black Panther has put it on his website yet, family. But go strictly there, family, to get the book because we want to keep the money in the community. You know, it's on Amazon, but get it from Naomi if you can, family, directly.
Absolutely, sis. All right, family. So I know you said Dr. Mott then changed up the scenery. I'm sitting here, sis, on the couch.
Chilling with it.
Look, usually I'm at my table, but I said, you know what? I want to chillax.
Yeah, the last show I was on my bed. I was tired.
Yes, sis.
So let me be professional this time. Let me sit my ass in my bed.
I'm excited, sis. I read the book, and I also read, I read a book from cover to cover. So, you know, I look at, you know, before I even get to the table of contents, you know, I want to know who published it. I read the dedication. You know, then I read the preface and then I read the chapter 1. So I'm glad that I did read the preface because I learned a great deal about why Dr. Kobi Kambon wrote this book. And he even talked about his master teachers. So it's a lot of good information that he provided us in the preface. And that's very important, sis. You know, when we pick up a work to study, we have to know like what qualifies this author to disseminate such information.
Right. What's the backstory? Where are your resources? Where are you getting this from? I have to know that because if it's weak, I'm not, unless it's just really based off your opinion and you state that, Other than that, I really need to know, like you said, why are you qualified?
Yeah, like what makes you qualified? Well, to kick it off, sis, Dr. Kobi Kambon, he published this book in 1992. And in the preface, he states that it took him over a decade. It took him over a decade to complete this book.
Mm-hmm.
He said that the purpose of this book, he said the purpose of writing this book is to provide the African community with basic models of the so-called African personality,
That's right.
which center on our natural, indigenous, Afrocentric, cosmological or worldview framework. Okay, so he was saying that basically the current models that they use to describe the personalities of Africans in America or African Americans were based on Western psychology, social behavioral science, he said, which cannot help us understand ourselves in the world in which we live. So that was the whole purpose of Dr. Kobi Kambon writing this book. Okay. And so in this book, he presents a model that describes the African personality in America. And this model is based on 3 assertions. You know how, like, sis, when you present a model, there are some assumptions made.
Correct.
And I just want to read through that because we're not going to read the page verbatim. But on page, I think, is it still in the preface? Hold on. Okay. So I'm on
13.
No, I'm on 8. So X111. So I'm on 8. So he says that he made a few assertions in the book. And the first assertion is that there is indeed an African reality system that is not only indigenous to Africans in America, but that most of us are almost totally unaware of it and how it determines our very lives.
Mm-hmm.
It further, talking about the model, it further asserts that this African reality system is superior, in fact, optimal for African people to the European or European American reality system to which we are forced to assimilate and internalize through the American societal institutional arrangement in order to enjoy whatever the rewards American life are supposed to offer, right? Mm-hmm. He says it thus argues that optimal African functioning lies outside of the alleged superior / optimal quality of European reality, i.e., the false assertion of European reality as universal and of African reality as primitive and inferior. Mm-hmm. The second assertion is that the model presented in this book also asserts that the average African in America operates or functions in a mentally disordered state on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. That's what they think.
Engendered by white supremacy domination over our African cultural reality here in America. That is because we are forced through white supremacy, miseducation, and indoctrination to function psychologically, behaviorally, etc., as a European person in Black skin. Ooh. A condition then is literally one of mental disorder unique to Africans, which the American or European controlled societal system itself supports and reinforces in African people. The final assertion is, he says, finally, this book asserts, among other things, that in order for Africans to escape and heal ourselves from this virtually unbelievable predicament of pervasive mental disorder, we must rebuild our African cultural infrastructure throughout the diasporan African community. This will entail our revitalizing and reinstitutionalizing our African cultural traditions, some of which may need to be modified for our contemporary situation, okay? So his African personality model was based on these assertions. So you might say, well, Dr. Ma'at, what qualifies Dr. Kobi Kambon to present his model? Well, first and foremost, in his preface tells us that his master teachers were Bobby Wright and Jacob Carruthers.
Talk about it.
I repeat, the teachers were Bobby Wright and Jacob Carruthers. So anyone who knows who Bobby Wright is, he termed the coin menticide, sis. Right. Remember in his book, he termed coin menticide, right? So people that use this term menticide, they got it from Dr. Bobby Wright. Also, Dr. Jacob Carruthers. Those were his his master teachers. Dr. Kobi Kambon also received his bachelor's degree in psychology from DePaul University in Chicago, I believe in 1969. It says, then he went on to acquire a Master's of Arts degree in personality abnormal psychology from Roosevelt University in 1971, and a PhD in personality and social psychology from the University of Colorado in Boulder in 1975. Dr. Kobi Kambon has published over 60 articles and 2 textbooks. I have one of his textbooks sitting with me right now, The African Black Psychology in the American Context, an African-Centered Approach. And this textbook is actually being used in the psychology department over at Morgan State University. Nice. So I have this. He has 2 textbooks, and he also has a number. I believe he has 5 books. We have one right here. I have another right here, The Cultural Misorientation. Sis, this was a wonderful read. I would love if one day we could get to this read, but this read was wonderful. The Cultural Misorientation, the Greatest Threat to the Survival of the Black Race in the 21st Century. All right. So I'm a huge, huge fan of Dr. Kobi Kambon, because just like Dr. Amos Wilson, he teaches us, it's kind of like he helps us, Sister Alima, to understand ourselves and to understand the world in which we live. And that's what psychologists do, right? And so I'm a huge fan of Dr. Kobi Kambon, just as much as I was, just as much as I am of Dr. Amos Wilson.
Did it feel like reading Baba Wilson's work? Like when you read his works, you know what I'm saying? Like their minds and the way their minds, those great minds think alike. Yes. It's so I was reading some of it and I was like, wow, like I just really felt like I was still reading Baba Wilson's work.
Absolutely. And he loves Dr. Amos Wilson. When I spoke to him, he spoke very highly of Dr. Amos Wilson, and he's good friends with Dr. Marimba Ani.
Yeah, he quotes her a lot.
Yes, he quotes her a whole lot. He said they are thick as thieves. So, like you said, sis, great minds think alike, right?
That's right.
All right, so let's move on to chapter 1, sis.
Yes, chapter 1, family. Chapter 1, the one word that I walked away with from chapter 1 was worldview.
Yes.
That was what stuck out. That is what he broke down in so many different ways.
Yes, he did.
The worldview paradigm. He talked about the social thrust. He was saying that's the historical, cultural, and philosophical conditions of 2 racial groups. And he said that our worldview is our conceptual, operational orientations to reality, nature, universe, and the cosmos. So basically the way we see things, the way we view the world. And he said that each culture has their own fundamental assumptions about life. I'm reading from my notes, family. Okay. Different racial groups generate different cultures. And he said culture and worldview are race specific. And you know how we always say, like people always say, the white people, they different. Like they don't think like us. Like they're just different people. And that's what Baba was explaining in the book, that the way that a culture is, everything about that culture shapes their worldview. And that's what Baba Wilson was talking about in the beginning of the Blueprint for Black Power.
Absolutely. Absolutely, sis. And oh man. So go on, sis. You kind of covered it. I want to add that he says that under normal or natural conditions, he said that Africans operate or function in terms of the African worldview under normal conditions, right?
Right.
And he says that and Europeans or whites operate in terms of the European worldview. But we know, sis, that's not the case for us.
No,
because of systematic miseducation, because of the media, because of religion, because of the orientations of our households, right? That we don't view ourselves through African lenses. We actually view the world. We don't view the world through African lenses. We view the world through European lenses.
That's right.
And he said in his introduction, in his preface, that this is what causes us to function. He said, this is what causes us to, to have a mental disorder. That's what he said, to have mental disorder or to function or to be dysfunctional, because we don't view the world through the lenses of our ancestors. We don't have an African worldview, which would be natural to us, right?
That's right.
It would be natural to us. So there were some assumptions, sis, that he made about the development and function of the worldview on page 2.
Okay.
So it says that each culture generates, and you said this earlier, each culture generates its own distinct approach to an experience of reality, i.e. indigenous definitional system, philosophy of life, or fundamental basic assumptions about life, nature. So you said that earlier, right? And it says that this worldview system naturally evolves through and reinforces. Oh, you said all this already. I'm just reading what you just said. I'm sorry, sis.
Oh no, I had just summed it up basically. I just summed up every little section.
Yeah, you did, and you.
But I didn't get to the nature of worldview systems, so I'm still in this little section here.
Okay, no, let's go to the nature of worldview systems. Let's go there because you actually did sum up chapter 2 and page 2 and 3.
Okay.
So let's go to nature worldview system. And as you said earlier, as you stated earlier, he says that our worldview system determines our definitions, our concepts, and our values, whether we consider events that we experience as important, true, good, etc., or whether we attend to them at all. And he goes down the bottom. He says it as an organized conceptual framework of culture, our cultural definitional system constitutes our worldview system, and thereby determines how we perceive and respond to various phenomenon that characterizes the ongoing process of everyday existence within our culture. And so he says that we acquire our worldview orientation from our biogenetic and geohistorical conditions and our social cultural indoctrination into our culture. Wow. And it says that the worldview orientation, therefore, constitutes a collective or shared phenomenon. Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay.
That's right. And he also said that worldview forms the basis for the continuity of culture because it reinforces social reality. And that's true. So if our worldview is based off of a European worldview, then we are going to constantly reinforce their culture, and we're going to reinforce their social reality, not ours, because it's all based off how you see things. I thought that was deep. I was like, that's very true.
Yeah, that is true. Wow. So then, sis, let's go into the European worldview and the African worldview.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let me share my screen.
Okay.
Let me share my screen. Let me know, sis, if you see it.
Yes.
Okay, let me enlarge it. I actually took this picture from my cell phone, so it may not look
smart. I'm gonna start doing that too.
Yeah, very clear. But so in this book, he introduces us, for those who don't know about Diop's two cradle theory, but he introduces us to Diop's two cradle theory of African and European worldview or cultural differences. Okay, so in 1974, Diop outlined a two cradle theory of the early development of the African and European branches of human civilization, which helps us to illuminate the nature of African and European worldview differences. In this model, he proposes a Southern or African cradle as the earliest form and a Northern or European cradle, which developed much later. He says, in contrasting these worldview systems, he described the African cradle as, so this is the diagram or the table that he's talking about. So the mode of lifestyle in Africa, he said it was agrarian and sedentary. Okay. Whereas the mode of lifestyle in the Northern cradle, the European, they were nomadic. The descent in the Southern cradle in Africa was matrilineal, but sis, we do know that they were patrilineal African societies.
Yes.
So he's saying that in the Southern cradle, and I know that Diop does, I have his book, Cultural Unity of Black Africa. He says that, Africa was, matrilineal, but I, did my little research, and, there were several, traditional African societies that were also patrilineal, but not, of course, it wasn't patriarchal, but it was patrilineal.
Right.
So anyway, he says that the Northern cradle was predominantly, I guess, patrilineal. Gods and deities, it says in the Southern cradle that they worship one universal God, whereas in the Northern cradle, there was a familistia of gods. I don't know about that right there either. And
I didn't agree with that either, sis.
Yeah, when I read it, I'm like, I'm thinking about,
what culture you're talking about. You can't group them all together, I don't think.
Absolutely. And so I didn't agree with number 3. But number 4, he says social philosophy, collectivism, and xenophilia. So yes, we did practice collectivism. We were communal folks. Xenophilia means we embraced, all cultures. Yeah, and it says in the Northern cradle, they were individualistic and xenophobic, in which they still are today.
Exactly.
The death ritual in the Southern cradle was a burial. In the Northern cradle, it was cremation. But I understand, sis, why it was cremation, because they were nomadic people. They were always traveling.
Yeah,
so it was easier to just
bury the bodies, and they didn't have the stuff probably either to bury the bodies.
Exactly, sis. So then it says human or anthropocentric relations. It says non-racial, that they were non-racial in the Southern cradle, whereas in the Northern cradle, they were racial. All right. Now, there were other African scholars that compared and contrasted the European worldview to the African American worldview. Sister, you want to go ahead and read that, or?
Right here on the chart here?
Yes.
Okay, so European/European American worldview on the left. We have African American worldview on the right. Ethos, you've got control, mastery over nature. Europeans, Africans, oneness, harmony with nature. Europeans, survival of the fittest. Africans, survival of the group. Europeans, exclusiveness, dichotomy, competition, individual rights. African, inclusiveness, synthesis, cooperation, collective, responsibility, values and customs. Europeans is separateness, interdependentness, materialism, intervention, oppression, and aggression. Africans, we are cooperateness, interdependence, spiritualism, circularity, complementarity, understanding, psycho-behavior modality. Europeans is individualism, of course, uniqueness, differences, European white supremacy, racism, anti-African. The Africans, we're groupness, sameness, commonality, humanness, religious. It's just always been a huge, a huge difference between us. And European people recognize that early. And to an extent, even though many may not agree with me saying this, but to an extent, it is a weakness because we are too open and too friendly. And even within nature, there's a balance. You know what I mean? Like the rat can't run past the snake or he's going to fucking eat him. So, I think to a certain extent, we, especially considering that we have this enemy here, we have to tweak how we are just a little bit. We still have to keep our good qualities within us, of course, but we have to be more aware of the differences of others because they're definitely aware of our differences.
I couldn't agree with you more, sis. It said join the panel. I'm sorry, hold on, sis.
Yeah.
There was a brother that he's trying to get in. He just inboxed me and said he's trying to join the panel. Absolutely, sis. So, and I agree with you that it is a weakness. And like you said, and there's no balance. Like you said, we're overly inclusive.
Yes.
You know what I mean? We're overly inclusive. Yeah. I think that's the best way that I could describe us.
I agree.
And I feel like the source of that, I don't want to blame that. Definitely on the nature of how, our nature. But then I think that the Abrahamic religions have a lot to do with it. Mm-hmm. You're taught, you're indoctrinated to love everyone and to forgive everyone. You know what I mean? And so it's kind of like ingrained in us. Black families or African families, we don't teach hate. We don't teach hate. We teach love and we teach forgiveness. And I think, like you said, there's no balance. In church, you hear, love your enemies, for they know not what they do, right? Forgive them, for they know not what they do. So it's kind of like, you're brainwashed to believe it. So, it's kind of like in us, sis. It's really in us. I think it's that. I think that is that, and it's also fear.
And at the core of it, we're just really good people.
Yeah.
I think that it's hard for many of us to wrap our mind around the individual that the European is. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're just so not like them. We're so freaking opposite that I think it really is. And somehow, for whatever reason, we try to mitigate their behavior. You know what I'm saying? Well, maybe it's because of this, or maybe no, they don't mitigate anything when it comes to us. You know what I'm saying? We have to stop doing that.
Absolutely, sis. It's kind of like a, like an abused wife in a husband situation. You see what I'm saying, sis? It's like, we get abused. They abuse us and we make excuses and we just keep going back. It's kind of like, despite, anything they've ever done to us, we still forgive them. We still go back. It's just like an abused wife husband sort of situation.
It is.
You know, is reminiscent of that.
That's what Munchausen syndrome. That's what we suffer from. Not Munchausen. Is it Munchausen? No, that's not the one, sis. Is it? Is that the one where you fall in love with your motherfucking like attacker or your kidnapper?
That's not
what it is. That's not what it is. That's Stockholm. It's Stockholm. Munchausen is when you try to make yourself sick for attention. It's Stockholm.
It's Stockholm.
Stockholm. You right, sis.
Okay.
But yeah, we got some Stockholm syndrome for that ass. Like we not. Look at the brother. He like damn right.
Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
Brother.
Peace. Good evening, sisters. How y'all doing?
We doing all right. Happy Father's Day, King.
Yeah.
Oh man, I appreciate it. Thank y'all very much. I'm enjoying the discussion. I've been on the line the whole time, trying to get inside the panel, and I finally figured it out. So I'm glad to be here.
Yay!
Excellent, brother. Do you want to add to the bill so far before we move on?
Nah, so far everything you guys are saying are part of my own personal notes that I made. So you're right on point so far. I'm gonna keep on listening, and I'll jump in when I feel the urge. Jump in.
All right, King.
Yes,
So a word that you used, Sister Alima, when you said that we are opposites, Dr. Kobi Kambon drives that point home, that our worldview is completely opposite. You know, I mean, he kept saying fundamental differences, but when you compare and contrast, like, and you look at it, it is like completely like night and day. Right. You know, the way they view the world and the way we view the world, it's literally like black and white, like literally. On page 12, he talks about he said the European worldview may be categorized as in humanity versus nature. So they're like humanity versus nature. So no wonder when you read in Genesis, it said that God gave man dominion, right? Over nature. You know, it's like you start thinking back to the stuff,
right? Mm-hmm.
Right. You know, but in African, you know, in Africa, we didn't view it. It wasn't a man versus nature. We wanted to be in harmony with nature. So that's an opposite. He also says on page 12 that a major theme emanating from this basic assumption of human nature relations is that of survival of the fittest. We always hear that survival of the fittest, right?
You take care of yours, I'm gonna take care of me and mine's.
Right. That
whole BS mentality.
Absolutely, that individualism. But we as African people, we think about the group. We think about collectivism. So again, that's an opposite. Now, at the top of page 13, sis, I love how he quoted Dr. Marimba Ani, something she published in 1989, where she describes the dichotomous nature of the European worldview. Sis, go ahead and read it, sis. You got to read that, sis.
Marimba Richards, 1989. It's Marimba Ani family, in case y'all didn't know. The mode of determining structure in the Western European worldview is that of power, control, and destruction. Realities are split into pairs of opposing parts. One becomes valued while the other is understood as lacking value. One is good and the other is bad. Other opposing pairs in the European worldview are knowledge, opinion, objective, subjective, science, religion, mind, body, male, female, man, boy, white, black, and so forth. And the mode of thought is literal, concrete.
I wanted to add something to the bill right quick.
What's up?
In my notes, I made a note about the movie Avatar that came out a few years ago, right? Mm-hmm. And in the movie Avatar, you had the white oppressors, if you will, coming to the indigenous people, want to take all their resources, wanting to kill them, whatever it took. And the Avatar people, the tribe, they had that connectiveness to everything mentality. They connected to the trees, to the animals. I mean, they had a real wholeness view of everything. And the white people had pretty much the view of survival of the fittest.
Right.
We got the machinery, we got the tools, we got the weapons, and we come and take what you got because we can.
That's right. That's a good example, brother.
Yes, it is.
I know a lot of people were saying that, that's how they viewed the movie, that it was like Africans, that they were African people, but they just depicted them as blue, not to seem so obvious.
Right. And even in the Black Panther movie, the same thing with the Wakandans having the vibranium and the resources and everything, but they wanted to break into Wakanda to come and take their resources. Like, we're going to kill y'all, do whatever it takes to get what you want because we can. And that was their worldview,
That's right. That is their world, and that's their realistic worldview. That's why they make movies on it, because that's how they see
And that's
themselves.
why the movie was so good.
That's
Yep.
right. It's extremely realistic. 'Cause they really do have this view that they can control whatever they touch.
Mm.
They really
Right.
and they view nature as something that they can manipulate and play with, and but you can't.
No.
Not at
No.
all. Not at
They
all.
they don't mind cutting down trees, they don't mind killing animals, they don't mind killing people, they don't mind destroying whatever to get what they want.
Mm.
You know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So sis, at the bottom, I'm at the bottom of page, oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm at the top of page 14, where he's describing the African worldview. He says the primary emphasis is on the survival of the corporate whole of nature, which includes all living things, rather than advancing some special interest group or segment apart from the corporate whole. Hence, the basic values, beliefs, and psycho behavior modalities characterizing the African worldview relate to the principles of inclusiveness. And remember, since I was just saying that we're overly inclusive, right?
Yes.
So it says inclusiveness
Yeah.
and synthesis, cooperation and collective responsibility, groupness, sameness, and commonality. And at the core of all of it, of course, is spirituality, right? So then he quotes Marimba Annie again at the bottom of page 15, sis, and he says that he describes the African, right, and our worldview. Sis, can you read that, please?
The African universe is made up of complementary pairs. These pairs are forces or principles of reality that are interdependent and necessary to each other in a unified system. The African universe is alive and rich. It is a phenomenal universe. The determining mode of the African worldview is harmony. The spiritual is the foundation of all being because the universe is sacred. Spirit needs matter to give it form, and matter needs spirit to give it force, being, and reality. Spiritual realities are timeless. Spirit does not die. I can't wait to read her book.
Yes, sis. Yes, I'm with you. But that's
we got a while for that, sis. So that, whew.
Oh yeah.
You gotta go and find that.
Right, brother.
Absolutely. So she goes on to say that the African worldview is characterized by unity, harmony, spirituality, and organic interrelationship, right? Because in African traditional culture, we believe that everything is everything, right? Everything is everything. And a matter of fact, oh man, I lost the quote. So I had a quote, but everything is everything. All right. And it says that, I lost my place. I said interrelationships. Interrelationship. As a result, traditional African society is a microcosm of the natural cosmic environment in which people are actively and closely involved with, at which they identify. African culture is replete with symbols and symbolic behavior. The African universe has great depth in many dimensions. Its order is sacred. That sacred order is constantly being communicated to us through natural phenomena of life, through experiences, through nature and natural events. All right. So like you said, sis, I mean, you know, we're really like polar opposites. Our worldviews are literally polar. It seems like, you know, in the European worldview, everything is black and white. You know, on page 13, he says, you know, everything, he says that the dichotomization of nature or reality into linear, ordinal rankings, such as everything is top or bottom, high, low, strong, weak, best, worst, superior, inferior, right? It seems like there's never a gray area, sis, with them. Sister Lima?
Can you hear me, Queen?
Yeah, I can hear you. I was saying that everything is either black or white, is either this.
That's right. That's why it's either good or bad. Like there's no gray area. There's no in between.
No, not at all.
Oh, well, maybe this or maybe no. It's either this or it's that.
Absolutely.
Very matter of a fact type people.
Absolutely. And so this is our last section, the research support for worldview differences between Africans and Europeans. So in this section, he's introducing us or providing us with the research to support the differences between the African worldview and the European worldview. And he talks about this assessment tool that he has called, hey, Sister Naya. Sister Naya.
Hey guys, I'm sorry that I'm late. I was having some computer technology issues. It wouldn't let me log onto my phone, and my computer is kind of messed up, so I may sound a little muzzled. So I do apologize. I need to fix it.
Oh no, sis. So give me tell the folks, tell the people, because you're actually a psychologist. So and you're reading this book with us, and I said, Naya, you gotta get on the panel because I said you have to because you are a psychologist. This is what you do. This is your field. Can you tell the folks a little bit about you, Sister Naya, and your thoughts on chapter 1?
Okay, welcome. Hey guys, thank you for having me. I do appreciate the time and the invite. I was so excited to come on the panel because I really do like discussing culture and community and psychology. So my background is I'm a therapist. So a therapist is a psychologist. The difference is between a therapist and a psychologist is some education and the focus. Usually psychologist focuses on personality development and testing, whereas I develop and focus on solutions and healing. So I have a master's degree in psychology, and I'm licensed in the state of Missouri um, as a licensed professional counselor. So if you have any questions about that, you can always email me at nayaamara.com and I can send you my info. So the first chapter, what stood out to me was the emphasis on culture and worldview, just like Sister Naya was saying, and how culture reinforces your ideas and how your culture is connected to your survival. And one of the things for Black people is that we have to be sure that we're identifying our survival, our issues, our problems, our struggles, our realities. A lot of times we just assume that everyone is concerned about our survival and what we need to move forward, but that's not the case. So we have to be aware of our culture and what it takes for us to survive white supremacy, racism, neocolonialism, all those things that impact us today. So the first step in psychology is always identifying the problem and creating the solution. And the solutions and the problems have to be connected to our own worldview and our psychology and how we think. So those are my initial thoughts.
Absolutely, sis. So did you get to the part in the book where he's comparing and contrasting? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brother Jonathan.
Well, no, I just wanted to add in that I'm a psychology major as well. My bachelor's and my master's in psychology. And so I'm a mental health professional. So I have about 15 to 20 clients on my caseload for the past 3 years or so.
Y'all better show up on this damn panel. Go ahead now, shit. I mean,
Black excellence, right? Black excellence.
yes.
But no, just reading this work and reading some of his other work and Dr. Wade Nobles and Dr. Amy Wilson, whoever, I know the complete contrast to what I just learned in school. I graduated last summer. So it's been a year I've been out of school. And my whole 6-year journey in college, they gave us a real cookie cutter format. Like, if a child is doing this, then blah, blah, blah. If a child is doing that, blah, blah, blah. But we're seeing your culture dictates a drastic change.
Yes.
An Asian client versus African American client or European client or a Mexican client. It can't be a cookie cutter solution,
right?
What's going on with them. And what do we deem abnormal is not always abnormal for their culture and what they're doing.
That's a fact, brother. Just like how they and I know that Dr. Umar Johnson talks a lot about this, and even his predecessor. I have a few of his books over there. A brother that talked about Black boys a lot. I have his books over there, and you guys probably know what I'm talking about. But even with our boys, how they say they're hyper, or they have ADHD, or they have this, according to Eurocentric standards. So, they're being misdiagnosed. You know what I mean? Like you said, it's not a cookie cutter situation. It depends on the culture. It depends on.
And once again, being in the field, I'm going to those school IEP meetings. I'm going to a court with these kids. And I'm seeing how fast these schools are ready to just slam these kids, put them into an alternative school, put them into a juvenile home, kick them out of school, suspend them, whatever they want to do, just so fast. And most of our mamas are totally uneducated.
That's right.
In this manner. So they just sign it over any kind of paper. They just signing.
Right,
And the
because
school,
in your mind, well, little JJ doesn't sit down at home. He's bouncing around. So if the teacher says he's bouncing around, he's probably got ADHD. But you don't tell him that most of his diet is fucking sugar and starch. So that's why the hell little JJ is jumping up and down. You see what I'm saying? Like,
and to be honest,
like you said, brother, there's so many things.
Yeah. To be honest, some of these mothers, they want that check from the state.
Yes, talk about
so
it.
You don't care about your child getting better. You want your child to be medicated so you can be like a zombie and sit in the corner and you get that check every month. That's real. I've met my share of mamas like that.
That's right.
And I know folks don't want that check. You don't care about your child being in a special ed class and never getting a high school diploma. Because you never get out of special ed. You always going to be in those kind of classes. You never get an actual high school diploma. You never go back to regular class most times whenever you're in that format. And so I know that going into it. So whenever I'm at these meetings, I'm like, hold on, wait. Let's not just do this. Talk to mama on the side, like, come on, mama, think about this, think about that. Because they just sitting there and it's all over their head. You got a room of 15, 20 professionals, most of them European, and they suit and ties. And the mama's sitting there kind of intimidated, like whatever they say, go. I'm like, no, we got power in this. Right. We got to say so in this. But I'm here to advocate. Like you, I'm here to advocate for you. You know,
we really do. We need more in the field, like you, brother, and more like Sister Naya. Like we need more of y'all in the field because you understand and you're willing to take that extra time and go that extra mile. And Europeans is not doing that for our children.
No, they're not.
Do that.
No, they're not.
I'm not gonna lie. I mean, Dr. Umar was a very big inspiration for me going to psychology. I know he got his little bad things. We all saying about him the past few years, but when I saw Dr. Umar for the first time 8 whatever years ago, I said, you know what? That's what I want to do. I had never seen a man speak on black boys like that.
I think that's
and then I started going to those meetings in person. I said, man, this is real. As far as his school and all that, I can't speak for that. But what I saw in those meetings, what I saw in this book, it was actually what I see with my own 2 eyes. I do know that much for a fact.
Right.
He is on point with that.
Facts.
Absolutely. So, Sister Naya, in the book, Dr. Kobi Kambon said that Black folks in America, that we all suffer from a mental disorder, right? He said all of us do. And he's saying that is a direct result of us being induced with a European worldview. And a matter of fact, in this book, Cultural Misorientation, he talks about cultural misorientation is actually, he called it a psychocultural disorder that Africans and America, that we get because of the education, because of religion. He says because of media. He says because of, I'm actually like perusing it now. He talks about our home environment and our parents operating with a European consciousness. And he was saying that this is how we become culturally disorientated. And he was saying how I believe that in this book, he's saying that this is that cultural misorientation is basically the root cause of most of our mental disorders. What do you think about that, Sister Naya?
Yeah, so that's a great point. If we look at the DSM-5, which is the primary tool that we use in psychology to diagnose, the diagnosis that you see the most that reflects the state of Black America is the diagnosis post-traumatic stress syndrome. Dr. Joy DeGruy, she calls it post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic slave syndrome. And she just changed the stress to slave because she created a cultural context to kind of reflect the experience of Black America and kind of what it was like for our ancestors, and as well as for us to go through chattel slavery. It was a very traumatic experience. And so what Dr. Wade Nobles does, he in his book, The Island of the Means, he talks about mean representing clusters of psychopathology. And so what you see in Black America is a psychopathology based in European thought and action. The primary diagnosis a lot of times the most abnormal diagnosis in our society is what you call sociopath or a psychopath. A psychopath has no empathy. They are very predatory. They focus a lot on themselves. They don't have a sense of community. So when you contrast that with like the Iceman inheritance, and then you look at Wade Nobles, and then when you look at Joy DeGroy, what you see is a cultural misorientation, which then turns into a psychopathology that looks like things such as depression, anxiety, anger. It may be ADHD, relationship conflict. So what you see within Black people on the wide sense is a cultural misorientation that can then turn into some mental type of disorder such as depression, anxiety. So because you are using someone else's cultural paradigm, it's creating a psychotic type of response to it, and then you're living out that psychosis. You can kind of see that in so many ways. So I won't go into detail.
Let's talk about this. No, let's talk about it. Let's get into the bleach. Let's get into bleaching our skin. Like, let's talk. Let's really talk about it. Let's
you can see it. You're right, sis. You can see it a lot. And you can see it. Like the internalized hate, the bleaching the skin, in the transgender community, you can see it like with the male personality, how he morphs into this woman just to look like a Black woman to attract a Black man. There's like so many different psychotic things that are happening within our community, like the sexual exploitation, like the perverseness, like the pedophilia, like the sexual abuse, like all of this is in essence at the root psychopathology and abnormal behavior, which you see in Africa when you retake the white person from it, but you don't see it as much. You don't see it in the same manner. So yes, I agree with the culture misorientation, and it's important that we understand it because it will cause a lot of male adaptive patterns that we just talked about. So we can go into that in detail a little more. I'm sorry I said a lot, but that's the best. The short
that was good. That's what we need.
Yes. I love when you guys go in, like hearing, two psychologists. Well, I say psychologists. You always correct me. Doc is a difference between the therapist and the psychologist. But so Jonathan, you majored in psychology, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then Naya, you majored in psychology, right?
Yes.
But you have a master's in.
Right. So I have a master's in psychology. So in the psychology field, they make it hard for you, right? You make it hard. So you have the master's, but after you get the master's, you have to have clinical practice. Once you get the clinical practice, then you have to take a test. So once you take the test and pass it, so that was the big thing with Umar Johnson. Umar Johnson has the education. He just doesn't have the correct licensure. And when you have the correct licensure, that means that you can treat and practice independently. If you don't have a licensure, you can't treat people. So that was the big thing. So you can have all the education in the world in psychology, but until you get that degree, it's going to be, you can't practice. So he was practicing without a license. So I have everything. I have the education, the experience, and the licensure. So that means I can practice.
Umar family, was he practicing outside of the scope of the school? Because you remember that was his argument. Did they find that he was?
Right, sis, I need to follow up with what happened. Yeah. But the thing about Umar, he has a different degree that allows him to practice outside the scope, but he has to be in the school. So they haven't, the last time that I checked, they haven't ruled on it. But he was trying to say that he was working for a school, so he had that right because he's an educational specialist. So basically, he's like a teacher that's like high up.
he has the degree, he just didn't have the licensure, because you can either practice inside the school or out. He didn't have the license to practice outside, so that's why they were trying to get him, because they don't want that. They want to try to protect the name, but he did. I think that for the most part he did some good work. I think that we want to see it published, but we can't take away the man's education. He did a great job getting that doctorate degree. He did a great job, just being able to articulate and be able to teach Black people how the educational system works against us. So he did some good things. The only reason why I got the license because I had to feed my family. Like, I had to work. And so when you have a license, you can bill per hour. The state will pay you like between $75 and $100. Now, he didn't have to do that because he already had Black people who had given him a lot of money. Right. So it's just really about how you get your money, sis. And he just got his money in other ways, and they didn't like that.
Right. Brother Sean, you wanted to say something? I mean,
no, I was gonna say the difference is I'm not licensed, so I work under somebody else's license right now.
Okay.
So what happens is in the hood, people know I'm a public speaker, I'm a published author, and they want to email me like, Sean, meet my son at a coffee shop and come and treat him or diagnose. I can't do that. My family members, come talk to your little cousin, come talk to Aunt so-and-so. I can't just go and just try to diagnose people and try to treat. I can't do that. I'm under somebody else's license. Oh, I get in trouble.
Right.
And I'm not about to go and do that until I get my license, like the sister did.
Right.
I was making a distinction between the two,
Right. And we need more licensed people, because then we can start to reinforce these ideas that has been done in books like this and with George DeGroy. So to reinforce this in a community, because just think about it, outside post-traumatic slave syndrome, no one has really did research on our community as a whole. Now, they have research studies that show that slavery changed our DNA in a way that creates some maladaptive things as it relates to our health and into the disease process. But when it comes to the psychology, we don't have enough Black psychologists and therapists doing enough research to be able to help Black people see how psychopathology within the European culture has impacted our mental health today. So it's good that you guys did the last series. Because that was excellent. And then this series, because it's bringing to light like the psychopathology. Who would think that if you follow European culture, you can end up being psychotic? Like, you can go through a process of like we know that because we study it, right? But the fact that you are replacing your culture, like the strong Black or African woman, strong African man, with someone else's themes and someone else's myths, someone else's religion, in itself is enough to create psychopathology. And we need to research why. That's the thing. So we need to keep having these conversations. So big up to you guys. I really appreciate it.
Yes, and I wanted to ask you guys a question while you were on the panel. In this last section, he presents us with research to support. He says research support for worldview differences between Africans and Europeans. So in this section, he presents worldview scale. And I'm at the bottom of page 17, a worldview scale. He said to assess these differences through the direct procedure of Africans and Europeans' self-reports. So basically what he did was he generated a number of questions, right? A number of items. And it says that these items were slanted toward either the African worldview or European worldview, and were presented, he says, in either a Likert, or it's like agreement or disagreement format, or a forced choice format, the latter pitting an African worldview choice against a European worldview choice. He says that all of the items have been pre-rated on their worldview content by a number of scholars having substantive knowledge about worldview differences. Okay, so he gave these preliminary questions to like a pool of people, and then he looked at those results, and he chose. He says he chose the items that best discriminated between the two groups of people, right? And they used 70% as a divergence criteria. So then he gave those results to, he utilized those results to create what he calls a worldview scale of 26 items. And then he administered these 26 items to a larger pool of people. Okay, so this was interesting to me. He says the findings revealed, as expected, that African males and females scored significantly more African-centered, while the European males and females scored significantly more Eurocentric on the world scales. Understood that. He says, additionally, we found that the African males and females scored more similarly in terms of degree of Afrocentrism, right? So he's saying, look, and he says, then did the European males and females in terms of degree of Eurocentrism. So he's saying that the African man and woman, that we scored nearly the same in degree of Afrocentrism, whereas the Europeans, males and females, they didn't, right? He said there was no significant difference between the African males and females' Afrocentric scores. So when I read that, I automatically thought about Kwame Nkrumah. And you know how he said, you know, you're not African because you're born in Africa. I believe it was Kwame Nkrumah who said that we're not African because we were born in Africa. We're Africans because Africa was born in us, right? So regardless of us being miseducated, you know, I'm thinking regardless of slavery, regardless of cultural discontinuity, you know, regardless of, you know, historical regardless of this, regardless of oppression, regardless of miseducation, indoctrination, religion, we still scored high in terms of our African, like in terms of African worldview. And in the degree of Afrocentrism amongst the males and females were similar. Why do you think that's so? I mean, I just thought, you know, I was thinking about genetics, you know, how, oh my goodness, I'm thinking about Ashwalk. Go ahead, sis.
Continue.
You said continue?
Yeah, because before Sister Naya answered that question, point out the fact that he says, however, the European males and females were significantly different. But what he stated was, after that, he said the finding interpreted that perhaps as a product of European patriarchal male dominance, that the male is the key cultural carrier, because they said that the males, basically the white male, they determined that they are the ones that carry their culture on, because they stood more firm to their European views than the female. Why do you think that is too, Sister Naya?
Yeah, please, can you answer those questions, Sister Naya and Brother Sean? So why is it, so in sum, why do you think that African males and females scored nearly the same in terms of their degree, in terms of their degree of Afrocentrism, but with European males and females, they didn't score the same in terms of the degree of their Eurocentrism?
Right. For me, what I found in my practice was, and there's a lot of research that has kind of come about as a result of something called resiliency. Don't get it twisted. We shouldn't have survived slavery. Now, we shouldn't have survived slavery given the physical and the psychological. We should have been exterminated, which was the goal, but we didn't, because Africans are holistic people. We don't separate our psychology from our spirit. And so there's a continuity of one person. So we have the inner strength as well as the mental strength. That's why I think Dr. Amos Wilson, he did a book and he talked about the brilliance of Black children. If you read that book, you will see that Black children, for the most part, at a very young age, in terms of their development and their social skills, they're performing higher, their intelligence, their social intelligence, they perform high. So in substance abuse, that's where I started my career. You will find something called resiliency, and you can see Black kids in the African-American community are resilient. So even though you see all this psychopathology, you see a level of brilliance as well. So I think that it's a result of resiliency that Black people can have held on to our African experience from generation to generation. Now, if you look at the definition of African psychology, what it says is that African psychology understands that the spirit is within us. So the spirit of Africanness, our ancestry, our DNA, that doesn't die. That lives on generation after generation. And that is what helps us maintain our culture. Because if you take, for instance, where I'm from, LA, they have this dance called crunking. And they do this crunk and they put white stuff all over their face and they be out there crunking and they be moving. Like you look at what's African. They have never, now these people are from Compton and Watts. Like they be out there with the drums, boom, 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 just be killing it. You take that crunking and the drums and the drill team. These Black people have never had any contact with West Africans. And we are still practicing our culture. It doesn't matter. So we're resilient. You know, we've been on this continent. We were in Africa for a long time. So we are socially intelligent before we developed the part of the brain that was focused on just logic and just kind of analyzing stuff. We were holistic. We were using another part of the brain. So we are very intuitive people and we're brilliant people. And that is how we're able to have some cultural unity and cohesiveness despite slavery, despite the psychological maladaptive patterns, despite the onslaught of racism and white supremacy. We still have that. And so that's what we need to focus on. And that's what we need to teach our children, to how to be brilliant despite. And that's what we do. So that's from what I've seen, that's what I see. I see a lot of brilliant Black kids who just have a lot of environmental stressors that prevent them from performing the way that their counterparts perform in everyday life. So that's what I think for the most part.
You said our genetic memory, sis, and you said that was
yes,
us and that African spirit that in us. Excellent answer, Sister Naya. Brother Sean, do you second that? Brother Sean's like, yeah.
I do second that, but I also think about the first Hidden Colors DVD. He was breaking down in the 1960s, for example, you know, a high time for the Black Power movement. One of the downfalls were the white women have always had a problem with the white man. It wasn't necessarily our sisters had a problem with us. We was good where we was at with the Black Wall Street and all that, but the white women has always had a problem with their man. And then somehow, some way, they came in and fused together with our movement and had some of our sisters feel like, you know what? I'm gonna go against my man too. I'm gonna go against our household too. I want to be certain things too. And that caused a rift between the Black man and the Black woman. And there's some things that are a bit weaker. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when I read a lot of history books, you know, medical apartheid, the birth of a white nation, things like that, those white ladies always had a problem with their white men. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that's why not on the same accord with their European thoughts, because that white woman was always suppressed. She was always, you know, that white man wanted to dominate and conquer everything, even her. Yeah. That's my opinion. That's my 2 cents.
I like how you tie that in, because that's true.
Absolutely, even her. So, Sister Naya, why do you think that there was? I know Brother Jonathan just offered up, you know, a reason for why why you had that difference in the degree of Eurocentrism between, you know, white males and white females. What do you think, Sister Naya? What do you think is the cause of that difference in degree of Eurocentrism between white males and white females?
I mean, can you guys hear me fine? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I mean, the difference is historically has been that Europeans have a patriotic system. Now, if you just take the visual of European culture and how it developed, when they went, when the first Homo sapiens left Africa, they went into the area where we call Arabia and stuff like that. And then some of them moved like into Europe, right? So when they encountered Asia, for the most part, the climate of Asia and Europe is a brutal climate. Absolutely. So the men had to be strong, and they could not afford for the women to be out hunting and foraging for food. So within their system, there's a high patriarchal system where the men rule. And that just comes from their environment, being in Europe, being in Asia, being in those harsh climates, and having to take control. Whereas in Africa, the women rule. So Black women have always been strong. So Black women have never taken a backseat to men. So I have to disagree that Black women have got on a white woman's bandwagon, because the white woman has actually got on our bandwagon and started to emulate us. I think we just got it a little backwards, because we've always been strong women. We've developed every social program that we have in the Black community was developed by a Black woman. Like all the programs, white women started becoming feminists by looking at us and how strong we were. And the reason why we were strong is because we've always been strong. So you take that harsh climate in Europe and you take the culture of the patriarchal culture of Islam, Christianity, and then you fuse that together, and what you have is a male-dominated system where women are subjugated to men. And so for that reason, the difference is that women don't have a lot of power in their system. Well, they didn't at first. Now, they got the Me Too movement. So, of course, they taken over. But historically, they didn't have a lot of power. So that's why you see the differences, and they don't have a lot of sense of culture. If you look at, what's his name? Brother, he does the tours. I can't remember his name. In ancient Egyptian culture, I can't remember his name. But when you look at some of Anthony Broder, when you look at like European culture, yes, crazy. Like he does an excellent job of breaking down European culture. They really don't have a culture. All the culture they have is based on African culture, or they've stolen it and taken it bits and pieces and kind of put together their own little culture. So I think that the difference you see within that frame is because they really don't have a culture, and the paradigm they use mostly is a patriarchal paradigm. Black women have always been strong. We have always been the rock of the community, even in Africa. So what happened with the Black male-female relationship wasn't the Black woman moving away. It was the Black man moving towards hip-hop, moving towards crack cocaine, moving towards money over bitches. That is what created the split in the African American community between male and female. It had nothing to do with Black women. Black women has always been the same. Now, in the recent 15 years or so, there's this feminist movement that has been encroaching on the Black community and have disrupted and distorted the traditional African psychology of a woman. But for the most part, you have to look at crack cocaine, music, hip hop as the primary reason why Black men and Black women can't get along. You listen to the song, you listen to Two Live Crew. I mean, the music in itself has transformed how our men look at us, therefore has transformed how we look at ourselves. So the split between Black women and Black men just happened in the last 20 to 40 years. Slavery didn't break the Black family. No. After slavery, we were still intact. No, segregation didn't break the Black family. Feminism didn't break the Black family. It wasn't into crack cocaine and hip hop, and we are the result, and we are the children of it. These millennials, they crack babies, okay? They are the result of crack. They are the result of hip hop. They are the result of that culture. So that's what we're dealing with. So we have to be clear that these people, that our culture was separated in the last 20, 30, 40 years, not necessarily as a result of slavery, because the Black woman was able to hold the family system down, hold her man down, hold the family down, and they worked as a unit. It wasn't until that money over bitches and that hip hop culture that it began to fall.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I agree with you.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say I had to second that. I agree with her too. I definitely agree that the Black family remained intact. Sis.
But why the hell are we not on air? What the hell?
What happened?
We not on air no more?
Oh yeah, we had a brief moment where it just stopped. Damn.
No, it's
wow.
Live. Mine says live.
Oh, mine says off air. I mean, I'm connected, but it definitely.
Mine says live too.
Yeah, mine says live, Sister
Mine
Naya.
says live.
Well, I
What did
can't
you do? It for yours, say, Sister Naya.
It just told me I couldn't connect to my camera because I was having some issues. I don't see anything at the top of my screen yet, but I'm on the phone, so
All right.
yeah.
I'm on the phone too. I don't know, but okay.
Okay, but what I was saying was that the Black family definitely remained intact throughout colonization, enslavement, through emancipation, Reconstruction, the Great Migration, the Great Depression, wars, Jim Crow, and even the Black liberation movements of the 1960s and 70s. I remember reading in the Census Bureau that between 1890 and 1960, married couples hit 80% of all Black households, right? 80% of Black households up into the 1960s. I have to agree with you, Sister Naya, that over the last 40 or 50 years, something happened. And like you said, what happened? What happened in the last 40 to 50 years? You had crack cocaine. You also had crack cocaine. You had deindustrialization, where a lot of Black men lost their jobs. So I think that economics and female-headed households also have economics, man. Sometimes it causes a lot of social problems. You know, look at Sean, like it's like, yeah, go ahead.
I'm saying even whenever they made quote unquote public housing, right? And they made it a rule to where the man couldn't be there. The man couldn't be in the house. If they come over there and find some male shoes over there, she gotta leave.
Well,
so
no,
all of these well-meaning brothers, these well-meaning guys say, you know what?
In the house, if he was a criminal, you have to be clear on that, because the law wasn't that the male couldn't be in the house at all. You couldn't be in there if you had a record, and it depends on your type of record. That was the housing. So I mean, if you didn't have a record, you were a man. It's the same way now. You can live there.
Yeah, we grew up around in the PJ Watts, and that's in LA. Men were always in the house. I've never seen a Black woman throw a man out of her apartment. I mean, I know that is something that in our conscious community that we like to reiterate so we can understand it. But generally, Black women do not throw their men out of their homes. Now, in the last 20 years, there has been like a change, like a lot of these Black women, because of the promiscuity and these women are having children with men they really don't know. But for the most part, Black women keep their men. I mean, we can go to the PJ Watts right now. The men are there, but they gang banging. And go ahead, sis.
No, go ahead, sister. She just muted her mic. I think it was Sister Alima, but go ahead, continue.
Yeah, so the public welfare system, we have to understand, started long before Black people were eligible for it. That system, that wasn't something that started with because of Black men. They had that in Europe. Exactly. They had the Irish. The social service field was started because basically the people, the first Europeans who came over here were poor and desolate, and they were in gangs and they were violent. So they created welfare and a lot of these systems for them. So like Dr. Mott was saying, or Dr. Sister Leo was saying, that you could stay in the home. Is just when you begin when the gangs and the violence and the dope started happening, because it was a lot of killing, they were forced to change the system. So Black women just don't kick their men out the house because they live in public housing. Those men are right there.
Yeah, I would never say that. Yeah, agreed.
Absolutely. And Naya, I just also want to say I second that when you were talking about how the European man treated his woman. I know that Job in his book Civilization or Barbarism talks about that a lot. And he was saying that the European woman had no economic value. You know what I mean? Like she had no economic value. He said that she didn't have any rights. They said she was raped, she was prostituted, she was sold, she was cloistered. They said that basically her sole purpose was to continue the bloodline. That's what they used her for. You know what I mean? So she didn't have any use. So that in turn made the European woman very angry. So I gotta agree with you, Sister Naya, on that.
And she also, the prostitution and the sexualization, that's in our culture, you can see that part of Western culture really impacting us a lot. One of the sisters, Dr. Yaya, she posted today that one of her friends is doing a research study, and her friend is saying basically her research is showing that the trans men are making, in the prostitution world, basically, the trans men are making more money than the heterosexual, just the regular women, the cis women, they call them cis women.
Wow.
So men are pursuing trans women more than they are pursuing regular women. Now, if you look in Greek culture and you look at the basis of sexuality within Greek culture, and then if you look at Marimba Ani, how their view of beauty is really warped. Now, you see what they view as beauty as these women who got bodies like, you know, they small, they got small bodies, like they got this andronomy look. They can go either way, either male or female.
Yeah.
And so in Greek culture, that's their standard of beauty. That's why sometimes you'll see the white woman, the best looking white woman, she'll be extremely thin. I mean, she don't have not a curve and shape in nowhere, but she's beautiful in their eyes. So what you see in that trans culture is this attraction to men and women who look like boys. And so one of the things, and I said that to say, is that's another result of, brother, could you go on mute, please? Thank you. That's just another result of that Western assimilation and how we have adopted a lot of their culture. Now, she didn't say whether these were black men or white men. She was just saying that the early research is showing that the trans women are making more money than the cis women. So that gives you a sense of where we are. And then you can even see, like within the prison culture, you see that a lot of men are having these same-sex relationships, and then you can see a rise in HPV and other diseases among Black women because men are having these dual relationships. And people don't understand that the reason for that is because a lot of us have internalized the Western paradigm and thinking, and that's our sexuality is being compromised because of it. So for us to survive as Black people, our survival is with the Black man and the Black woman and the Black family and the Black community. That's our survival. Not saying that you shouldn't love who you want to love, or you shouldn't be who you want to be, but that's not your survival. We will die if we continue to follow that Western type of sexuality where they see power in same-sex relationships. So we have to be careful when we look at that.
Wow. You have my mind over here going like this night.
I'm sorry.
No, I mean, it's a good thing, sis. So like in some, and I want to, hey, brother Mpu, we getting ready to close out, brother, but go ahead and speak. You jumped on the panel. What are your thoughts, King?
What's up, brother? We can't hear you.
Unmute your mic, brother.
Okay, peace to the queens. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I apologize for being late. Much respect to you all, everybody on the panel. You know, Father's Day things, you know, the family pulled me away, but here I am. I'm ready. Dr. Maj, you already know.
I know.
This is my cat. But anyway, I don't even know the sister's name, but I feel her vibe already. She going in like we go in, you know what I'm saying, every Sunday. But again, I apologize for being late. I don't want to, you know, I'm just here to vibe for a minute. You know what I'm saying? I apologize for again my tardiness. I love you guys. Let's do this. All right.
What were your thoughts on chapter 1? What did you?
Oh my God, chapter 1. Let's go back to the preference. What?
Yes.
Oh my God. Listen. Listen. When we talk about African personality in America, we already know that we jacked up. We jacked up from the floor up, and we have to definitely do. If we're going to reach our people, we definitely got to start with the mind. That's why I love your work, Dr. Mod, and this brother's work, and obviously Baba Wilson's work, because they deal with the mind.
That's
So
right.
so much so that we have to, you know, and our people are so caught up into, you know, just rushing here and there, but we don't want to. Our people don't want to sit and listen to okay, this is what we need to do to change our thought pattern. You know what I'm saying? How we perceive through their eyes what reality is, and this type of work lets us see that, look, this isn't indigenous to us. You know, this is something totally foreign, alien to us as a people. And once we get what belongs to us back, how we think, how we see, then we can move forward and begin to you know, take charge of some things. You know, and I'm looking at my picture here, quiet as kept, you know, I got a Nike hat on. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, I'm throwing me under the bus. You know, this isn't us, but I'm rocking it because it was a gift. But you know, we got. I'm just saying, you know, this is their stuff. Okay, let me turn it around. Let me turn this shit around. Yeah, let me turn that around. You know, Nike on that shit on the front. Okay, we good. Oh shit. Okay, but oh fuck it. Excuse me. Oh shit. But anyway, we need to support us. You feel me? We need to support us. 100. I'm rambling. I'm excited. I'm excited to be back on. You know, Sister Lima, the scholar, the writer. You know, I'm just excited to be back on. Peace, y'all.
No, peace and power, brother. I appreciate your presence as usual and all in your words. But yeah, brother. I mean, like you said, we have to deal with the mind, and that's why it's important that more of us get involved in psychology. You know what I mean? Like it's imperative that more of us get involved in psychology and study, you know, the African mind, you know, from an African-centered, you know, perspective, right? That's why it's important. Like if you notice in his book, he says the personality, an African-centered framework. You get what I'm saying? So any type of analysis of our minds, it has to be African-centered. You know, it has to be African-centered. Go ahead, brother Charlie.
And like the sister said earlier, we need more of us conducting the research, doing the studies and things like that, because you look into some of the forefathers of psychology, they were most times some sick and racist men themselves. And they were the one that created some of these models that we use and some of the tests that we use and all that. So we need our own scholars making our tests and making our standards, if you will, you know?
Absolutely.
But the fact that there is, because for years we didn't even know, well, we were told that there wasn't an African-centered framework. You feel what I'm saying? But the fact that we know that there's an African-centered framework, we have a blueprint to work with. You feel what I'm saying? Because we were taught. I got a book, man. You look through the pages and it shows savages. That's what we were. And then the other page, we got Europeans hunting for food. You know, they were called men hunting for food. But when it comes to us, we were called savages. You know what I'm saying? So that's how we viewed the continent. But if we look, I love, like you said, Dr. Mott, an African-centered framework.
That's
so
right.
There is an African-centered framework for us to build up off of. Okay. And just like I hit you up, Dr. Mott, about starting that for the young men. You know what I'm saying? I want to do that here, you know, in the area where I'm at, because we do need, you know what I'm saying? We do need that. We do need that for our seeds, you know what I'm saying? To begin to just pour into them, even if they don't wear the African garb, but just to have an African mindset. Like, look, this is where I come from, and I'm proud of where I come from. Italians were I'm glad to be Italian. I'm glad to be Polish or whatever. Why aren't you glad to be from the continent? Come on, somebody. I'm just saying.
That's right, brother. And whenever you're ready to do that, let me know. and I'll get in touch with Dr. Dante Ryan, and we can bring, it was and for those who are listening right now, he's speaking about the Boys to Men Leadership Conference that we just had in Baltimore at a school. It's called Gilmore Elementary School in West Baltimore. And we had a Boys to Men Leadership Conference, and it was beautiful. You can go on go to my Facebook page, Deanna Bailey, and you'll look at the pictures and you can see all the different workshops that we had set up for the boys. It was beautiful watching the men stand up and pour into the young boys. They, we had a workshop on conflict resolution. There was a workshop on good choices versus bad choices, a workshop on entrepreneurship, a workshop on what distinguishes a boy from a man. There was a workshop on business dress and business etiquette. The boys were taught how to tie a bow tie, how to tie a regular tie, how to shine shoes. I mean, it was absolutely beautiful. They were taught about nutrition. And so definitely, Brother Impu, let me know when you're ready. And I'll speak to Dr. Dante Ryan and we'll bring it down. And anybody that's listening, if they want us to bring the Boys to Men Leadership Conference to your city, just let me know. Hit me up. You can email me at Deanna_Bailey@yahoo.com, or you can hit me up on Facebook. My name is Deanna Bailey on Facebook. But going back to what you were saying, Brother Jonathan, on how we need, I think you said more tools, right? More of us involved in Black psychology. There was something else you said, more of us involved in
the research and making the
research.
The standards and the tests that we use.
Right, the standards and the tests. And what I love, Dr. Kobi Kambon has 2 tests. He has something called a cultural misorientation scale. Okay, he has that test. He also has another test called the worldview scale. So where can
we find that other book, Dr. Maya? The black and red book. What could you find that? Is that on Amazon?
Exactly. I need.
Yeah, you can get this. You can get it on Amazon. But like Sister Alima said, Amazon is going to take a lot of, and I ain't gonna say a lot of money, but they're going to take their cut from them. But I can hit the elder up, and if you guys want copies, we can get it directly through the elder.
Let's do it. I'm all about that.
Yeah, I read about that. Y'all can tell when I read a book because I just mark it on up.
I'm the same way. That's real scholarship. That's scholarship, man.
And that means you actually read it. I be seeing people books, they be opening it, talking about, yeah, this was a deep read. I'm like, damn, where the highlighting and shit?
Yeah, no notes.
But
no notes.
Absolutely.
You can't quote nothing. You can't quote nothing out there.
Nothing.
So like you said, while we're conducting this research, we definitely should utilize the tools that are already available to us. So you have the cultural misorientation scale, and you also have the worldview scale that he introduced in here. And if you notice, I told him when I talked to the elder, I said, I noticed that you didn't put the actual questions from your scale in the book. He said, nah. He said, but if we want them, and we're serious about doing it, he said he'll give it to us. Okay. So we don't have to worry about it. We can definitely get the items from him, and we can administer the tests and run our own, conduct our own experiments.
Do you think he will come on one Sunday?
Oh yeah. The elder already told me that as soon as we finish the book, we can bring him on.
Come on.
Okay, I can't wait.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna get my questions lined up.
Absolutely. So I just want to make sure that I'm correct. Got the psychologist on the board. I want to make sure I'm correct. So it's your culture first of all, it's your environment that gives rise to your culture. And then your culture gives rise to your worldview. And your worldview dictates your survival thrust. Do I have the order correct? Mr. Naya?
Yes, you have it correct.
I have it correct. I just want to make sure I have the hierarchy correct. Okay. And I just want to leave. I want the folks tonight who are listening and folks who will be listening in the archive, I want them to leave with understanding that we as African people have a different worldview than the Europeans. And that, when we since we are induced with their worldview, that is the root cause of our psychopathologies. So a lot of these mental disorders that we have, Sister Naya said it, bipolarism, what did you say? Anxiety, depression, a lot of those psychopathologies, or the root cause of those psychopathologies, is our cultural misorientation, or in other words, practicing a foreign or alien worldview. Am I correct, Sister Naya and Brother Jonathan?
That sounds right to me.
All right, there it is. So we got to get back to, we had to adopt our worldview again. And so do you guys have any last minute, any last words? I know we've been on for an hour and a half. We said we want to go for about an hour. Do you guys have any last words?
No, I think I think that everybody the panel did great,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm just honored to be on the panel and to be talking to you guys and finally having somebody to dissect these books with. I have tons of these books and nobody in my area at all reads anything like this. So I can never share or dialogue or even debate anybody on what I'm reading. So
I know how that feels.
I'm finally blessed to have everybody on the panel. I appreciate y'all and I love y'all.
Hey, love you too, brother. We appreciate your presence and all of the information that you brought forth tonight. So hopefully, Sean, then you'll be back next Sunday, man. I'm gonna be looking
for the house, man. I'm in the house. I'm here.
Okay.
Hopefully, Sister Naya will return.
Yes,
definitely. I'm here, guys. You guys got my attention. I got my calendar marked, and I got me a reminder and everything. I'm ready for you. Thank you.
All right, Brother Impu. Brother Impu Haru.
Hey, let's get it. Let's get it. I'm excited that we got two new people on the panel. What? Let's do this.
Right.
Iron sharpens iron, for real.
That's right. No doubt. So next week, family, join us back here. Join us back here to discuss chapter 2, Afrocentric versus non-Afrocentric approaches to the study of African personality. So next week we will be discussing chapter 2. We only have one, as Sister Lima stated earlier, we only have one discounted and autographed copy of this book left. We only have one copy left. So you can either get it through us for $30 at lilylapoetespeaks.com, or you can go on Amazon and pay $45 for it. Me personally, I would rather pay $30 for the book, and the book is autographed. It's autographed by Dr. Kobi Kambon. All right, so we have one book left, and you can get it from lilylapoetespeaks.com. Yeah, you should hold on. Let me put it on there, brother Jonathan, so they can see it. Signed by the elder. So
all day.
So
I got mine, son. Right there. You know what I mean? Right there.
Yep, I got mine. My camera's not working, but I got mine.
That's funny.
No. All right, family. We'll see you back here next Sunday. Peace and power.
Peace.